All right. So it's another installment of hanging out with Jenny and Steph. Today we're going to talk about using process art to lean into our fears, um, or any emotion really. But today specifically, we're going to talk about fear and turning fear into curiosity, and what happens when you can sort of play with that, um, with art, with creativity, with color. Um, Again, I'm Stephanie Gray. This is Jenny Hahn, and we're
Hey
gonna
guys.
just we're gonna keep it real and move from here. So, um, y- yeah, fear is a big one right now, especially for me, and I'm sure Jenny, you've felt,
Sure is.
yeah.
Oh
And for
yeah.
a lot of people I've talked to, I mean, makes sense. We're in the middle of a pandemic, among other things, and part of what we learned in with process painting early on is that to not shy away from what you're feeling in the moment. And it felt counterintuitive. I don't know about you, Jenny, but the first time, like Sarah encouraged us, to go into something that we didn't want to feel, even if that's physical ailments or whatever, to
Mhm.
actually get curious about them and then, bring them into what we're working on. um, it can feel like, are you kidding me? That's just going to perpetuate it, but actually it doesn't. I mean, I don't know about you, but I it actually gives room for other things to occur when I, get curious about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like counterintuitive, right? That
Yeah.
like you said, like what you want me to go into the pain or into the fear? I think Pema Chodron, the Buddhist nun author, had something to say about that, about leaning in to the difficulties.
That's so funny because before we started, I wrote leaning into our feelings. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And in a way, like being able to soften into them, because fear is like this resistance, right? This hardening in a way. And so to me, getting curious about it is having to lean in and then softening into it as well, which can be really terrifying and uncomfortable. But I think when we bring that attitude of softening in and then bringing the curiosity to it, I mean, that's really where it transforms, uh, you know?
Yeah, something about the creative process, something about working with color or movement or both as you're leaning in helps to soften it, I believe. I personally believe. And there's something
Yeah,
that
definitely.
happens, at least for me, like I can paint my scariest thing, the thing I'm most fearful of, or, even a monster that might represent it. And, I'm thinking, gosh, if I put that on paper, A, it's going to come true, or B, it's going to just be so frightening. I'm going to,
Right.
not be able to deal with it. But then when I do, not only does it feel better, but then but then it's usually funny. Like it's usually a
Right.
caricature of my fear, and it's not so
Yes.
potent anymore. And yeah, the softening, I feel like that's what creativity does. And it's so amazing because you don't have to know how to do art. You don't have to be an artist to do this process.
No, not at all. And I love that you said, like, I think you said caricature or cartoon. I love that even if we're working with stick figures or cartoons, like it's all valid. Like it's about that process, that shift that happens, and it's not about the finished image at all. It's about meeting the fear. For me, oftentimes the fear around when I'm creating is the well, not just with creating but with anything. When I feel fear, it's because maybe it's the first time I've ever done something, and I'm attached to, like, I don't want to get it wrong,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
and maybe and maybe that doesn't apply for me with art anymore because I've been doing it for so long. But there's still, every time meeting the blank page, there's that fear of the emptiness, not knowing, the not being able to control it. And of course, there's that wanting to get it, quote, right,
Mm-hmm.
or, to like the results. And so, really, there's like, at least for me, a small amount of fear every time I show up to the page or the canvas. And I don't know that that ever fully goes away with
Yeah.
with art.
Yeah. But it,
But
but it, but it does allow you to meet the fear every time. Like it's almost like it's
absolutely,
a friend there with you holding your hand, like, okay, I'm here. We're going to get through this together. And that sounds really cheesy, but it's kind of true.
I'd love to read, Steph. Before I was telling you that, we've talked about turning fear into curiosity a lot in workshops and such, and you had us journaling one time about it. And I'd love to read kind of what I wrote from your prompt around that.
Mm.
Um, I wrote, fear feels like a gripping contraction, a recoiling into a small place. It feels like not enough, nervous, tight energy. Curiosity is playfulness. It's an expansion into unknown worlds, an outgoing adventure. If I turned my fear into curiosity, I might discover something new and incredible. I might find what has been overlooked or discarded out of ignorance. I might be delighted.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I might be
Yeah,
delighted.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I have to
That's,
say, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah, go
how
on.
I feel. No, I'm sorry about that, but the delighted part is nails it for me when I'm working with
Mm,
fear and working with
hmm.
art.
Yeah, yeah. That shift that can happen into delight. And I know there's different ways of fear showing up. There can be fear already on our hearts from something out in the world, but there can also be the fear just even of creating. And I always go to that place of playfulness. Like, uh, I think of my young nieces because they both love to draw and paint and do all the, they're so creative. And never in their lives did, when they were given art materials or things to play with, never did they say, I don't know how to do this. I don't know.
Mm.
I want to paint, but I don't know how. Or at least so far in their lives, they haven't. I hope they never do. But, children just have that natural curiosity and playfulness. And it's almost like uninhibited, and that's the energy that I try to bring to my fear when it shows up is, how can I meet this in a playful, curious way and not have to know how to do it, not have to figure it out?
That's incredible. And man, I mean, talk about being able to transition into the real world, quote unquote, when you're working at your painting or in your book or whatever, in that way, and then going out into the world and
Yeah.
treating something
Yes.
big like that.
Absolutely. These tools apply to to
Oh,
life, right? It's not just about the page.
totally. Well, and
Yeah,
speaking of tools and applying them, we both have some stuff to share. We have some
we do.
a story and an image to share. So,
Yeah. Do you want to start us off, Steph?
yeah, sure. I will start off. Let me see. Let me get my screen share up here. And I'll just start talking. So, when this all started with the pandemic, with COVID, obviously it really, I mean, it threw me for a big loop. Um, my brother lives in New York City with his pregnant wife, and I live here with my husband, and it's just the two of us. And I struggle sometimes with chronic illness. And so, what was happening is just really tightening up and clenching up with the fear of, my two most important um, family members just thinking about them passing away, dying, leaving. And boy, I mean, that's probably for a whole other show, but I could talk about loss and all of that too. But yeah, so loss and being left behind is like probably my biggest fear in the whole world. And so that was coming up big time for me. So I was having a Zoom chat with Sarah Oblinger, our teacher and mentor, and I was saying, man, I am almost completely stuck in this fear. And she said, well, why don't you work with it? Why don't you paint it? Why don't you put it in your book? And that terrified me. And so I sat with that for probably a good week before I did anything. And it just had me gripped so tightly that I was like, you know what? All these years I've been doing this. Yeah, I can do this, and it'll be scary, but I'm going to do it. So I'm working in my book now. I'm not working at the wall right now. But this is this is Ethan, my husband, and he's just passed away. I think we're in a hospital room. I can't really tell. And this is his soul leaving his body. This is me crying, and I really was feeling into it. And oddly enough, I'm not the best artist as far as capturing images and stuff, but it actually kind of looks like him. Jenny knows him. but
Ethan
but
has a
yeah,
big body.
then I started thinking about my brother and his wife. And so I painted New York City, and I painted a lot of blacked out windows because I thought, a lot of people might be gone or in the hospital. And then just everything is sort of being filled with this. I don't know. I honestly didn't know. I don't know if it's smoke or what. It just was fear, the fear I was feeling. But I'll tell you what, once I did all of the scary parts, then I ended up doing the soul leaving the body. And then these three sort of light bodied angelic images came in, and one of them has their hand on my shoulder, and there's some love being dropped in. And I immediately knew after that I could deal with it, that I would be okay. It wasn't easy. And, but I got it out onto the page, and I have to tell you, I have not. I mean, yes, of course, I get scared about stuff, but it doesn't grip me anymore like it used to. It really doesn't. It after after I did this, I was able to put it in the book, close the book, and and then I could live my life a little bit more fully.
That's
So,
beautiful.
yeah, that's my
Wow, Steph.
story. Yeah, and it works. It works for me. We'll put it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That is amazing and so brave too. Like to put your greatest fear onto the page, and to work with it that way and to have that kind of transformation from it is really incredible.
And again, counterintuitive. Why would you think that? We're sort of conditioned to run away from all of that stuff and to do
Yes.
everything we can to avoid it. So, yeah.
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 Thank you.
Ah,
Thanks for sharing that.
absolutely.
That's amazing.
So, how about you,
All
Jenny?
right. I will share one as well. Uh, let's see.
All
Okay.
right.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
So, this is one of my paintings where I have really worked with fear. Um, and oh gosh. So, I off and on throughout my life, I've experienced anxiety and fear. Um, it's been just something that's always been, not always been there, but returns at different times. And this, I used to have a lot of panic attacks. And so one time, and this was painted when we had our Creative Nectar space in Mission, Kansas, our storefront studio space. And this is actually 3 panels of paper, so it's probably about 22 inches wide by maybe almost 60 inches long, tall. Um, and yeah, I just I approached the page as if it were a mirror in a way.
Mm.
And so this is sort of a reflection of my body And if I remember correctly, it seems that I started kind of with the heart energy and kind of this nervous, just unsettled, electrifying energy around the heart. And as I got more curious about the whole body, I think you would come around, Steph, to check in with me. And I felt a real tightness and knots in my stomach. And so you can kind of see in the gut area this kind of knotted up, and yet it looks like there's some sadness.
Mm,
It's crying, but it's it's puking. There's some weights kind of dangling from it. It looks like in the weights there's kind of these judging guys in it. And the whole, not everything here makes sense, at the time. And still, when I look at it, it's like, well, I'm not sure exactly what it means, but it felt so freeing to paint it. And I mean, there's even like this, I don't know, this skinned open pig or something. I don't know.
mm,
um and confusion in the mind, kind of this racing tightness at the throat. I'm not sure what all these hands are, but there was something really liberating about getting it out of my body and onto the page, and really exploring, like, what does it look like? Like, what do I feel in my body when I'm gripped with panic?
mm,
And then what does it look like when I invite it onto the page? And I too had some elements of grace come in toward the end. There's actually some hands coming in on mine as well,
mm,
sort of giving me some energy. And then there's these little scissors with teeth and wings that are coming in, and they're about to cut these weights off.
mm.
So, yeah, it was really intense. And yet, it is interesting, similar to how you said, Steph, like, actually getting it out, there is a shift that happens. It's not necessarily that the fear or the panic goes away completely, but it is a softening and kind of a just allowing it to be there, and then not having it gripping quite so tightly, or leading me from behind. It's like I see it, and I invite it. And yeah, it's that turning it into bringing some curiosity to it and allowing it to shift. Really, really powerful practice.
Mm. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. There is a grace that happens. I mean, I've seen it more than once, not only with myself or with you. And by the way, I would remember very vividly when you painted that. Um, and it's interesting, when you're in a workshop with other people, you can physically see the change from when they start to go in, when they start their work, their painting, and then when they leave,
Yes.
myself included, I can feel it, but
Yes.
to be able to witness that is so powerful
Oh my
and
gosh.
humbling. Oh man.
And
Um,
that is the magic. That is the magic of seeing that, almost a shift that happens. That yeah, yeah, it's magical.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. There's something, and we use the word alchemy a lot, but there's something that does happen. You can even be painting something that you absolutely hate, and then come back to it a week later or a couple of weeks later, and something shifts and softens, and next thing you know, it's not so bad. You're like, hey, I kind of like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And I wish I had more words for what that shift is, but all I can say is, like you said, humbling, and then magical, alchemical.
hmm
I mean, yeah, I don't have the language, but it's so humbling and beautiful to watch, to witness in others. It's yeah.
yeah. And it makes sense we don't have language for it because it's really heart space work, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
like,
It is.
so the heart
The head wants to
language
figure it
is,
out, but
yeah, the heart's language
yeah,
is more feeling and images and
exactly.
man. Well,
Yeah.
this has been really good. I think the only thing I might
Yeah.
miss is having people ask questions or apply it to what they're doing. So, I mean, I'll just
Yeah.
put it out there. If anybody feels like sharing, please do,
Oh, please
in the
do put some
comments.
comments,
Yeah.
yeah,
If you
or
have
share
images,
something.
you can do that as well. We would love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally.
because we're still over here in quarantine and wanting some interaction. Not that it wouldn't be awesome anyway, but it'd be especially awesome right
Especially right
now.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, so that's our little bit about turning fear into curiosity. We look forward to doing more of these and really digging deeply into some of the aspects of how the process has worked for us. And yeah, we look forward
Yeah,
to it. Yeah,
more to come.
more to come for sure. So until that next time, we will we will see you later.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.